I am Brianna Wilson, 68 years old, and retired after teaching English for 4 decades. Last month, my 3 adult children invited me to dinner at La Maison, the most exclusive restaurant in town. I spent hours getting ready, excited to reconnect. When I arrived, the hostess looked confused. There was no place for me at their table. My daughter Amanda smiled thinly. "Maybe a cheaper place would be better for you, Mom." I was standing there heartbroken when I noticed the owner looking my way. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to hear more about navigating family relationships when you are no longer needed. The invitation from my children had come as a pleasant surprise. For the past 5 years since my husband Jack passed away, our family gatherings had become increasingly rare. Jack fought cancer for 3 long years before he finally found peace. Those years drained not only our emotions but also our finances. Even with insurance, the medical bills had been staggering. I had to make difficult choices about treatments, medications, and care options while watching the savings we had carefully built over decades slowly disappear. My 3 children had their own busy lives, of course. Amanda, my oldest at 42, had established herself as a formidable corporate attorney at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. She lived in a luxury condo downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river that Jack would have loved. Her salary was something she often mentioned in passing, a subtle reminder of her success. Her designer clothes and perfectly maintained appearance were her armor against the world. Daniel, 39, had followed his father into the financial sector, working as an advisor at a wealth management firm. He had been divorced twice, each marriage shorter than the previous one. Both ex-wives had cited his workaholic tendencies and emotional distance as reasons for leaving. Despite his financial expertise, he frequently called me with investment opportunities that seemed more about solving his cash flow problems than growing my modest nest egg. My youngest, Sophia, 35, had built a reputation as an interior designer catering to the wealthy. Her Instagram account showcased minimalist spaces with occasional pops of color that cost more than my monthly pension. She had recently married Thomas, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. Their wedding had been featured in a regional lifestyle magazine, though my contribution of $30,000 toward the event received no mention in the glossy spread. What none of my children seemed to remember were the sacrifices that had made their success possible. When Amanda needed tuition for law school, Jack and I remortgaged our home. When Daniel's first business venture failed, we covered his debts to give him a fresh start. When Sophia wanted to study design abroad, we used money earmarked for our retirement travel. After Jack died, the distance between my children and me grew wider. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. Visits happened only when they needed something. Last Christmas, all 3 were too busy to visit, sending expensive but impersonal gifts instead. The tags were printed, not handwritten. My life settled into a quiet routine. I joined a book club at the local library. I tended my garden. I volunteered teaching literacy skills to adults twice a week. My home, the 2-story colonial where we had raised our family, felt too big sometimes, but it held memories in every corner that I couldn't bear to leave behind. So when Amanda called about a family dinner at La Maison, I was thrilled. La Maison had opened 5 years ago to rave reviews and had quickly become the place to be seen for the city's elite. Reservations were nearly impossible to get. I had never been there, but I had read about it in the local paper. I spent days preparing for the dinner. I bought a new dress, navy blue, with delicate beading around the neckline. I made an appointment at the salon to have my silver hair styled. I even splurged on a manicure. I found small, meaningful gifts for each of my children. For Amanda, a first edition of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, her favorite book from childhood. For Daniel, a vintage coin from the year he was born that had belonged to his grandfather. For Sophia, a bracelet I had worn on my wedding day. As the taxi drove me to the restaurant, I practiced the stories I wanted to share. I wanted to tell them about my garden's blue ribbon at the community fair. I wanted to hear about their lives beyond the carefully curated highlights they occasionally shared. I wanted to feel like a family again. I was naive enough to believe that was what they wanted too. The facade of La Maison was understated elegance, with warm lighting spilling from tall windows onto the sidewalk. The doorman greeted me with a practiced smile and gestured toward the hostess stand. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables draped in crisp white linens. Well-dressed patrons spoke in the hushed tones that wealth seems to inspire. I smoothed my dress, suddenly aware of its department store origin among designer labels. The delicate beading I had admired in my bedroom mirror now seemed gaudy and obvious. My sensible low heels clicked too loudly on the marble floor as I approached the hostess, a willowy young woman with a sleek ponytail and perfect posture. "Good evening. I am meeting my children. The reservation should be under Amanda Wilson or perhaps Daniel Wilson," I said, trying to match the quiet dignity of the space. The hostess tapped at her tablet with manicured fingers, her brow furrowing slightly. "I don't see either name in our system for tonight. Could it be under another name?" "Perhaps Sophia Carter. That's my daughter's married name." More tapping. Another apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, I don't see that name either." That was when I spotted them. My 3 children were already seated at a prime table near the windows, champagne flutes glinting in the candlelight before them. Amanda was speaking animatedly, her hands gesturing in the way they always did when she was making an important point. Daniel was nodding his attention, divided between his sister and the sleek watch on his wrist, the one I had given him for his 30th birthday. Sophia was half listening, her gaze fixed on her phone. "There they are," I said, pointing. "That's my family." The hostess looked uncertain but led me to their table. The conversation halted abruptly as we approached. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me with varying degrees of surprise and something else I couldn't quite identify. Mom Amanda set her tone, suggesting she was greeting an unexpected delivery person rather than her mother. "You're early." "The invitation said 7 o'clock, I replied, glancing at the delicate watch Jack had given me on our 35th anniversary. "It's 5 after now." "We said 7:30, Daniel corrected, checking his watch again with a slight frown. I was certain the text had said 7, but I smiled to cover my confusion. "Well, I'm here now. It's so wonderful to see you all." An awkward silence followed as they exchanged glances. I noticed then that the table was set for 3, not 4. There was no empty chair waiting for me. "Is there a problem?" the hostess asked, looking between us. "No problem," Amanda said smoothly. "There's been a slight miscommunication. Mom, we didn't actually include you in the reservation." "I don't understand," I said, still smiling, though my cheeks had begun to ache with the effort. Amanda gestured around the restaurant with a manicured hand. "This place is very exclusive. We've been waiting for months to get this reservation. It's really more of a business dinner anyway. Sophia is discussing a potential design project for one of my clients, and Daniel has some investment advice for us." "I see," I said, though I didn't. "Not really." "Maybe a cheaper place would be better for you, Mom." Amanda added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "This menu is pretty expensive, and we know you're on a fixed income now." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood there clutching my purse, the small wrapped gifts inside, suddenly feeling foolish and unwanted. A memory flashed of Amanda at 7 years old, proudly reading her first chapter book to me in our cozy living room, her eyes seeking my approval after each page. "I could just pull up a chair," I suggested, trying to salvage the evening. "I don't mind." "The restaurant has strict seating policies," Daniel interjected quickly. "Fire codes and all that." "Right." He looked to the hostess for confirmation. The young woman looked uncomfortable. "Well, we can usually accommodate." Besides, Sophia finally looked up from her phone. "We're discussing some family business that might not be appropriate." Another patron at a nearby table glanced over, then quickly away, embarrassment coloring his features. I realized with a sinking feeling that I had become a spectacle, the unwanted mother creating a scene. "It's nothing personal," Mom Amanda said in the same tone she probably used to dismiss opposing counsel. "We just need to sort out some financial matters." "Of course," I said automatically, years of putting my children's needs before my own taking over. "I understand. You all have important things to discuss." "We'll schedule something else soon," Daniel offered without making eye contact. "Maybe brunch next month." The hostess was still standing awkwardly beside me, her professional composure cracking with sympathy. "Ma'am, would you like me to find you a table for one?" Before I could answer, I heard Amanda whisper to Daniel, "Did you bring the information about selling Mom's house? We should discuss market value before the realtor calls her." The hostess led me to a small table near the kitchen, her kindness only deepening my humiliation. As I sat down, I could see my children resuming their conversation, champagne glasses raising in some private toast. I thought of last Christmas when all three had been too busy to visit but had apparently found time to meet without me. I wondered how many other gatherings had happened that I knew nothing about. I sat with my back straight, determined not to let them see how deeply their rejection had wounded me. The menu before me blurred as I blinked back tears. I kept thinking of reasonable explanations for their behavior. Perhaps they were planning a surprise for me. Perhaps they had financial concerns they didn't want to worry me with. Perhaps they still saw me as the strong mother who had guided them through childhood, not realizing that I sometimes needed them now. The hostess returned with a glass of water, her smile gentle. "Can I get you something from the bar while you look at the menu?" "Just the water is fine, thank you," I replied, not trusting my voice for more. As she walked away, I caught Amanda looking in my direction, then leaning in to say something to her siblings. Their eyes flickered toward me before returning to their conversation. I had the distinct feeling I had become a problem to be managed, rather than a mother to be loved. 20 minutes passed as I sat alone nursing my water and pretending to study the menu. The prices were indeed shocking: $36 for an appetizer of scallops, $48 for a small plate of pasta. I calculated what each dish represented in terms of my monthly budget. One entree equaled a week of groceries. The bottle of wine my children were sharing cost more than my utility bill. Eventually, Amanda approached my table, her expression, a practiced blend of concern and condescension that she must have perfected in courtrooms. "Mom, if you really want to join us, you could just order an appetizer and share with us," she suggested, as if offering a generous solution to a problem I had created. "The portions here are quite large." "That's thoughtful of you," I replied, though it wasn't. My mind flashed to the countless meals I had gone without so my children could have seconds. The nights I'd claimed I wasn't hungry when there wasn't quite enough to go around. The grocery trips where I'd put items back because there wasn't enough in the budget after buying the ingredients for Daniel's special birthday cake or Amanda's requested lunch for a field trip. Amanda returned to their table and I watched as she resumed her seat. Daniel got up next and approached me, checking his watch as he walked over, as if timing how long this interruption would take. "Mom, I grabbed an extra chair from another table for you," I said, beginning to rise. "Actually, that's against the restaurant's policy," he said quickly. "They're very strict about their table arrangements here. It's an insurance liability." Behind him, I could see a large party at another table pulling up an extra chair for a late arrival, the staff helping accommodate them without issue. The lie stung more than the rejection. "I see," I said, sinking back into my seat. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, while I have you alone, I've been meaning to talk to you about your house. It's really too big for just you now. Have you thought about downsizing?" Before I could answer, he continued, "I know this great estate lawyer who specializes in asset transfers. Very tax efficient. We should set up a meeting." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the restaurant's air conditioning. "I'm quite comfortable in my home, thank you." "Of course, but at your age, it's important to start planning," he said, patting my shoulder in a way that made me feel like a child being humored. "Don't worry, we'll handle everything. Amanda and I have been discussing how to manage your finances since you're getting older." As Daniel walked away, fragments of their conversation drifted to me across the restaurant. Property values in her neighborhood have increased 20%. Could easily sell for $400,000. Needs to be in a managed care situation eventually. Split the proceeds 3 ways after renovations. Their words conjured unwanted memories. Working summer school during my teaching years so Amanda could attend an expensive tennis camp. Postponing retirement for 3 years to help Daniel recover financially after his divorce. Dipping into my own retirement fund to contribute to Sophia's wedding, a contribution she had called a nice gesture but hardly enough. I had taken only one real vacation in my adult life, a 2-week trip to Europe for our 25th anniversary. Jack and I had saved for years for that trip. My children had gone on school trips to Washington, D.C., summer programs in Costa Rica, semesters abroad in Paris. I had wanted them to have the opportunities I never had. Now they seemed to view my sacrifices as obligations fulfilled rather than gifts given out of love. Sophia approached next, her designer heels clicking precisely on the floor. She slid into the chair across from me without asking her critical gaze, taking in my appearance. "That dress is so vintage, Mom," she said, clearly struggling to find something positive to say. though the cut really doesn't flatter your figure anymore. Next time, you should let me take you shopping somewhere more appropriate for your age." I thought of the hours I'd spent choosing this dress, wanting to look nice for them, wanting them to be proud to be seen with me. "It's new, actually." She replied, her tone making it clear that new and fashionable were entirely different concepts in her mind. "Anyway, we're discussing some important family business tonight. Amanda's been working with this amazing property management firm that specializes in transitioning seniors to retirement communities." The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. This dinner had never been about reconnecting with me. It had been about deciding my future without me. I tried once more to share my news, the small victories and joys of my life that they had no interest in. "I've been meaning to tell you all that my garden won first place at the community fair last month. The roses that your father planted have finally—" "That's nice, Mom," Sophia interrupted, already checking her phone again. "Listen, I need to get back. Thomas is texting me about some fabric samples for the guest room renovation." As she walked away, I felt a tightness in my chest that made breathing difficult. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. I closed my eyes, briefly remembering Jack's words during one of our last conversations. "The kids are used to getting everything they want, Bri," he had said, his voice weak but his eyes still sharp. "We spoiled them. I worry they'll see you as a checkbook, not a mother, when I'm gone." I had dismissed his concerns, then unable to believe that the sweet children we had raised could become such calculating adults. Yet here I sat alone in a crowded restaurant, watching my children discuss how to best liquidate my life's memories without even the courtesy of including me in the conversation. I could feel tears threatening and willed them away. I would not cry here. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. But each breath felt like it carried a weight pressing down on lungs that couldn't quite expand enough. I looked at the strangers around me, couples, leaning toward each other in intimate conversation, business associates, sharing comfortable laughter, families enjoying each other's company. All these connections that I had somehow failed to maintain with my own children. Across the room, I noticed someone watching our strange family drama unfold. A man in his early 50s, well-dressed, but with a warmth to his expression that spoke of genuine success rather than pretension. There was something vaguely familiar about him, but I couldn't place him in my distress. As my children continued their discussion at their table, oblivious to or unconcerned with my pain, I felt the sharp contrast between the loving family I thought I had and the reality before me. The distance wasn't measured in the feet between our tables, but in the vast emotional chasm that I didn't know how to bridge. Daniel returned to my table, after they had ordered their entrees, not bothering to ask if I wanted to order anything beyond the water glass I'd been nursing. He pulled out his phone, opened a calculator app, and got straight to business. "So, Mom, realistically, when do you think you might be ready to downsize? The market is hot right now, and your neighborhood is becoming very desirable for young families." The question was asked with such casual disregard for what my home meant to me that I momentarily couldn't find words to respond. My home wasn't just a financial asset. It was where Jack had carried me across the threshold 45 years ago. It was where we had brought each of our newborns home from the hospital. It was where we had celebrated birthdays, weathered storms, and built a life. I hadn't been planning to move at all, I finally managed. Daniel frowned slightly, as if I'd given the wrong answer on a simple math problem. "Mom, be practical. That house has 4 bedrooms. You only use 1. It's a waste of space and resources." Before I could respond, Amanda joined us, sliding elegantly into another chair. "Daniel's right. We've actually been discussing this extensively. I found the perfect retirement community just 20 minutes from here. Very exclusive, beautiful grounds, excellent care options for when you need more assistance." When I need more assistance, I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Well, yes," Amanda continued smoothly. "We have to think ahead. You're not getting any younger, Mom." Sophia appeared then, completing their united front. "We've already spoken to a realtor just to get an estimate. She thinks with minimal updates we could list it for at least $450,000. You've had a realtor evaluate my home without telling me." The betrayal of this simple act hit me harder than I could have expected. "Just preliminarily," Sophia waved a dismissive hand. "We'd need to update that kitchen before listing. Those cabinets are ancient, and no one wants laminate countertops anymore. The kitchen where I'd taught each of them to bake cookies, where Jack and I had danced on our 40th anniversary when we couldn't afford to go out. where I still felt closest to him, when I made his favorite recipes. And most of the furniture would need to go, Amanda added. Outdated stuff like that doesn't help with staging. What about my things? I asked, thinking of the antique secretary desk that had belonged to my grandmother, the bookshelf Jack had built when Amanda needed somewhere to display her childhood trophies. Most of it is pretty outdated junk, Mom, Amanda said, with the brutally efficient assessment of someone who saw objects only in terms of monetary value. But don't worry, we'll each take a few sentimental pieces. I'd like that curved mirror from the hallway, Sophia chimed in immediately. And I've always liked Dad's old leather chair, Daniel added. They were dividing my possessions while I sat right there, not asking what items held meaning for me, not wondering what pieces of my life I might want to keep, just cataloging and claiming like vultures circling. Daniel was already typing numbers into his phone calculator. If we sell for $450 after realtor fees and the renovations Sophia mentioned, we're looking at maybe $400,000 net, split 3 ways, minus capital gains considerations. What about what I want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. None of them seemed to hear me, or if they did, they chose to ignore the question. Mom, at your age, you really don't need all that space, Sophia said, patting my hand condescendingly. It's a lot to maintain. Think how much easier your life will be in a nice little apartment with staff to help with the heavy lifting. As she spoke, memories flooded through me with painful clarity. Jack on a ladder carefully painting the nursery pale yellow before Amanda was born. The trellis he built in the backyard where my roses now climbed toward the sundae. The height marks for each child on the kitchen doorframe, tracking their growth through the years. The corner of the living room where I'd taught each child to read sounding out words from worn picture books. The bedroom where I'd held Jack's hand as he took his final breath, promising to keep our family connected after he was gone. A promise I had failed to keep. My hands began to tremble more noticeably. I clasped them tightly together to hide the shaking. A tear escaped, despite my best efforts trailing down my cheek before I could catch it. None of my children noticed. They were too busy planning how to dismantle my life. Across the restaurant, I saw the man who had been watching us earlier stand up from his table. He spoke briefly to one of the servers, his eyes occasionally flicking toward our table. There was purpose in his movement, determination in his posture. As another tear threatened to fall, I reached a moment of complete clarity through my pain. These 3 well-dressed, successful people at my table were strangers to me now. The babies I had nursed, the children I had nurtured, the young adults I had supported through crisis and celebration, they were gone. In their place were these calculating individuals who saw me as a problem, to solve an asset, to liquidate a responsibility to manage. So we're thinking maybe we could have everything wrapped up by the end of summer, Daniel was saying, still focused on his calculations. That gives you a few months to start packing and decide what you want to keep. The retirement community has a 6-month waiting list, but I've already put down a deposit to hold a unit, Amanda added, as if this act of deciding my future without my input was a kindness. I can help you sort through your clothes, Sophia offered. Most of them probably need to be donated anyway. I sat perfectly still as they continued watching them, as if from a great distance. In that moment, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, a raw wound that would take time to heal. But alongside it grew something unexpected. A spark of anger, yes, but also a flicker of determination. A reminder that I had once been more than just their mother. I had been a teacher, a mentor, a guide to hundreds of young people over the years. I had helped shape minds and hearts beyond my own family. And one of those students was now walking directly toward our table. Mrs. Wilson, Brianna Wilson, from Lincoln High. The voice was deep, confident, and tinged with a slight Italian accent. My children's conversation halted abruptly as we all looked up at the well-dressed man now standing beside our table. Recognition dawned slowly through my emotional fog. Michael, I said, hardly believing my eyes. Michael Adani. His smile was warm and genuine, crinkling the corners of eyes that still held the same intelligence and determination I remembered from 25 years earlier. Yes, I can't believe you remember me after all these years. Of course I remember you, I said, feeling a smile form naturally for the first time that evening. You were one of my most dedicated students. Michael Adani had come to our school as a struggling 16-year-old immigrant, speaking broken English and facing constant discrimination from both students and, sadly, some teachers. For 2 years, I had tutored him after school 3 days a week, helping him master not just the mechanics of English but the nuances and beauty of the language. "You look wonderful," he said then, glanced at my children with polite curiosity. "And these must be your successful children I've heard about over the years." My children stared at him with confused expressions, clearly trying to place this confident man in expensive clothes who spoke to their mother with such obvious respect. "Yes," I said suddenly, aware of how they might appear to an outsider. "Amanda, Daniel, and Sophia, this is Michael Adani. He was a student of mine many years ago." Adani Amanda repeated her expression, shifting from confusion to sudden recognition, as in the owner of La Maison. Michael gave a modest nod. "The very same. Your mother changed my life. When I arrived in this country, my English was terrible, and most teachers had written me off. But Mrs. Wilson saw something in me. She stayed after school for hours, helping me improve, advocating for me when other teachers wanted to place me in remedial classes." My children exchanged glances, a new calculation clearly taking place behind their eyes. "When I told her I wanted to be a chef, everyone else laughed," Michael continued. "This was before cooking shows made it fashionable. But your mother encouraged me. She even lent me money for my first semester of culinary school. That had been $1,500, a considerable sum for us at the time. Jack and I had delayed replacing our aging water heater to make it possible. Michael had insisted on repaying every penny, even though I'd told him it was a gift. It was nothing I said, the habits of modesty deeply ingrained. It was everything, Michael corrected firmly. And here you are dining in my restaurant all these years later. What a wonderful surprise." "Well, actually," Daniel began his tone, suggesting he was about to clarify our awkward family situation. "Actually," I interrupted, finding strength in Michael's genuine warmth. "My children were having a business dinner, and I just happened to arrive separately." Michael's gaze swept over our configuration, taking in my isolation at the small table, the lack of food before me, and the evidence of tears I hadn't quite managed to hide. Something shifted in his expression, understanding dawning. "I see," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "And how are these successful children treating their mother these days? I hope they appreciate the sacrifices you made for their education." The question hung in the air, pointed but delivered with such polite interest that it couldn't be dismissed as rude. My children shifted uncomfortably under his steady gaze. "We're very grateful," Amanda said automatically, her courtroom voice failing to convey genuine emotion. Michael nodded, then turned to signal discreetly to his staff. A few whispered instructions later, he returned his attention to me. "Mrs. Wilson, would you do me the honor of being my special guest tonight? I rarely have the opportunity to properly thank the people who made a difference in my life." As he spoke, memories of my teaching career flooded back. The nervous boy with broken English who had stayed after class, determined to master this new language. The way his face had lit up when he got his first A on an English essay. The graduation ceremony where he had sought me out, specifically to tell me he'd been accepted to culinary school. Those memories brought with them a feeling I had almost forgotten: pride. Not in my children's accomplishments or possessions, but in the positive impact I had made in the world beyond my family. In that moment, I felt a surge of forgotten dignity and strength. My children watched this interaction with increasing discomfort, aware of the attention it was drawing from nearby tables. The power dynamic had shifted unexpectedly, and they didn't quite know how to respond. "I would love to join you, Michael," I heard myself say with a confidence that surprised me. The decision crystallized in that moment. I would no longer accept their dismissal and disrespect. I would no longer sit alone while they planned to dismantle my life without my consent. Michael's face broke into a broad smile. "Excellent, I have just the table." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, genuine and liberating. It rang out across the hushed restaurant, drawing glances from nearby diners. My children stared at me with shocked expressions, as if I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. "Michael," I said, standing up straight and smoothing my supposedly outdated dress, "I'd love your best table, just for one." "Of course, Mrs. Wilson, I insist," Michael responded enthusiastically, offering his arm with old-world courtesy. "In fact, I have the perfect table reserved for special guests." As Michael escorted me away, I caught a glimpse of my children's faces. Amanda's mouth had fallen open slightly, her carefully maintained composure cracking. Daniel was half standing, his calculator app still glowing on his abandoned phone. Sophia had frozen mid-text, her manicured fingers hovering over her screen. The maitre d' hurried ahead to prepare a table in the center of the restaurant, in full view of all the other diners. It was clearly the best spot in the house, with perfect lighting and an unobstructed view of both the room and the garden patio beyond the windows. Antonio Michael called out, "Please inform Chef Paolo that Mrs. Wilson has joined us tonight. She is to have the full tasting menu with wine pairings on the house." Antonio, a dignified older gentleman in an impeccable suit, nodded with genuine pleasure. "Of course, Mr. Adani. Right away." As I was seated with a flurry of activity erupted from the kitchen. A tall man in a white chef's coat emerged, his face breaking into a wide smile as he approached our table. "Mrs. Wilson, it cannot be," he exclaimed, taking my hand in both of his. "Do you remember me, Paolo Ricci? I was in your advanced placement English class, the same year as Michael." Another former student. I looked more closely at his face, seeing past the beard and the years to the earnest young man who had written beautiful essays about his grandmother's cooking. "Paolo, of course I remember you. Your final paper on food as cultural expression was one of the best I ever received." Paolo beamed with pride. "I still have it. You wrote that I should consider combining my love of literature and food someday, and now I am head chef here, writing our menu stories." Michael explained loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Paolo and I met in your class, Mrs. Wilson. We stayed friends through culinary school, and when I opened this place, I knew he was the only chef I wanted. We owe our partnership to you." Around us, diners were watching with interest. I could feel my children's stares burning into my back, but I didn't turn around. Instead, I allowed myself to be swept up in the genuine warmth of my former students' welcome. "I'm creating a special dish just for you tonight," Paolo announced, before returning to his kitchen. Michael took the seat across from me, his expression turning more serious. "Mrs. Wilson, I apologize if I'm overstepping, but I couldn't help noticing the situation with your children. Are you all right?" The simple question, asked with genuine concern rather than the condescension I'd grown accustomed to from my family, nearly undid me. "I'm better now," I said truthfully. "It seems my children have been making plans for my future without consulting me. They've decided my home is too large, my possessions too outdated, and my independence too uncertain to continue." Michael's expression darkened. "Without your consent, that's not right." "Apparently at my age I don't need to be consulted," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Well, at my age," Michael replied with a small smile, "I've learned that the people who try to control others are usually the ones most afraid of losing control themselves." His insight struck a chord. My children's behavior wasn't really about me at all. It was about their own fears and insecurities, their need to maintain the illusion of perfect control over their lives. The first course arrived, a delicate arrangement of scallops with edible flowers. As we continued our conversation, I found myself sharing more about my life, since retirement, about my garden victories and my volunteer work. Michael listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own stories of building his restaurant empire. "You know," I said between courses, "it's ironic that my children are so concerned about my financial situation. They don't know that I've been working with a financial advisor for years." "Oh," Michael raised an eyebrow. "Jack and I always lived below our means. We had to with 3 children and my teacher's salary. But we were careful investors. The house is completely paid off. I have a rental property they don't know about. And thanks to some smart decisions after Jack passed, my portfolio has nearly doubled." Michael's eyes twinkled. "They have no idea, do they?" "None whatsoever," I confirmed. "They see my modest lifestyle and assume I'm struggling. They don't realize it's a choice, not a necessity." As we spoke, I became aware that my children had been huddling in conversation. Amanda was now approaching our table, her professional smile firmly in place. "Mom, this is such a lovely surprise," she said smoothly. "We had no idea you knew the owner. May we join you? We've finished our business discussion." I looked at her for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time the calculating woman she had become. Then I did something I had never done before. I said no. "I'd prefer to dine alone tonight, Amanda. Or rather with my friend Michael. You three seem to have important plans to discuss regarding my house and possessions. Don't let me interrupt." Amanda's smile faltered. "Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said calmly, taking out my phone. "In fact, I think I'll call Sarah while I'm thinking about it." "Sarah," Amanda repeated, confusion evident in her voice. "My attorney," I clarified. "Given your plans for my property, I should probably update my will and advance directives. I've been meaning to make some changes anyway." The color drained from Amanda's face. "Mom, we were just trying to help plan for your future." "My future is not yours to plan, Amanda. Not without my input, not without my consent. I raised you to be independent and successful, and I'm proud of that. But somewhere along the way, you three forgot that I am a person with my own wishes and dignity, not a problem to be managed or an asset to be liquidated." Daniel and Sophia had joined us now, both wearing expressions of dawning horror as they realized how much of their conversation I had overheard. "Mom, please," Daniel began, "we only want what's best for you." "What's best for me is to be treated with respect," I replied evenly. "To be included in decisions about my own life. To be valued for who I am, not what I own." I turned back to Michael, effectively dismissing them. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe the next course is arriving, and I don't want it to get cold." They stood there for a moment longer, stunned by this unfamiliar version of their mother, who set boundaries and commanded respect. Then, without another word, they retreated to their table. I spent the next 2 hours enjoying the finest meal I'd had in years, savoring each exquisite course, while catching up with Michael and meeting other staff members who turned out to be former students. Throughout the evening, I could feel my children watching their dinner forgotten as they witnessed this unexpected revelation of their mother's life and connections. When I finally rose to leave, Michael insisted on calling his personal car service to take me home. As we waited in the lobby, he took my hand warmly in his. "Mrs. Wilson, it would be an honor if you would consider joining us once a week to teach English to some of my staff who are new to the country. Many of them struggle with the language just as I did. They could benefit greatly from your experience." His offer was a gift beyond measure, a chance to be valued for my skills and knowledge rather than dismissed for my age. "I would love that, Michael. Thank you." As the sleek black car pulled up, I left without saying goodbye to my children. Some lessons are best taught through actions rather than words. 6 months later, I hosted my own dinner party at La Maison. Michael had insisted I use the private dining room, refusing to accept payment despite my protests. Around the elegantly set table sat my new circle of friends and confidants, none of whom were related to me by blood, but all of whom had become family in their own way. Eleanor from my book club raised her glass in a toast to Brianna, who showed us all that second acts can be the best part of life's performance. There was Robert, my neighbor, who had started joining me for weekend gardening sessions after his wife passed away. Maria and Joaquin from the literacy program, where I still volunteered twice a week. Sarah, my attorney and now close friend, who had helped me rework my will and establish firm legal protections for my assets. And of course, Michael and Paolo, whose friendship had expanded beyond our weekly English classes for the restaurant staff. In the months since that fateful dinner with my children, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. What had begun as a painful rejection had blossomed into a period of unexpected growth and connection. My volunteer work teaching English to immigrants at Michael's restaurant had evolved into a formal program with a small stipend. The participants ranged from dishwashers to sous chefs, all eager to improve their language skills. Their gratitude and respect healed something in me that my children's dismissal had damaged. After careful consideration, I had decided to stay in my home, making only the modifications necessary for aging in place. A first-floor bathroom renovation, handrails in strategic locations, better lighting along the pathways. I would not be pushed out of the place where my heart lived. With Robert's help, I had started a community garden project on the vacant lot at the end of our street. What had once been an eyesore filled with litter was now bursting with vegetables and flowers tended by neighbors of all ages. Children from the local elementary school came weekly to learn about plants and insects, their excitement rekindling my love of teaching. My relationship with my own children had fundamentally changed. After that night at La Maison, there had been 2 weeks of silence, then awkward attempts at contact. Amanda had sent a formal email apologizing for the miscommunication. Daniel had left a voicemail suggesting we clear the air. Sophia had texted that she was concerned about me. I had responded to each with the same message: I loved them, but I would no longer accept disrespect or exclusion. If they wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be on terms that recognized my autonomy and dignity. Their initial reaction had been anger, then hurt, then eventually a grudging recognition that something needed to change. Our contact was still limited and somewhat formal, but there were signs of genuine effort. Amanda had taken a day off work to drive me to a doctor's appointment last month, listening attentively to my concerns without checking her phone once. Daniel had spent a Saturday helping me with yard work, never once mentioning selling the house. Sophia had invited me for coffee, asking about my garden without any hidden agenda. Small steps, but meaningful ones. Perhaps the most unexpected development had been my financial partnership with Michael. When he mentioned plans to expand La Maison to a second location, I had surprised him and myself by offering to invest. My formerly secret rental property had recently sold for an excellent price, and rather than split the proceeds among children who didn't need or deserve them, I had decided to invest in someone who valued our connection. You know, I said to my dinner guests as we enjoyed Paolo's exquisite dessert course when my children excluded me from their dinner table, I thought it was the end of something. I never imagined it would be the beginning of so much more. Maria nodded in understanding. Sometimes the family we create is more nurturing than the family we're born into. Or in my case, the family I gave birth to, I added, with a small smile that held only a trace of lingering sadness. You taught me something important, Brianna Michaels said, setting down his coffee cup. That night when you stood up to your children, you showed me that it's never too late to establish boundaries to demand respect. I've applied that lesson in my own family relationships. That was the deepest healing I realized. Being valued not just for what I had done in the past, but for the wisdom and strength I continued to offer in the present. My new friends saw me as a whole person with experiences worth sharing and a future worth investing in. The betrayal still hurt when I allowed myself to dwell on it, but increasingly I found myself focusing instead on the unexpected gifts it had brought me. Freedom from trying to please adult children who couldn't be pleased. New connections with people who genuinely enjoyed my company. A sense of purpose that had nothing to do with my role as a mother. As we finished our meal and prepared to leave, I felt a peace that had been missing for too long. The journey from heartbreak to healing hadn't been easy or quick. There had been many nights of tears of questioning where I had gone wrong, as a mother of mourning the family relationships I had thought were secure. But through that pain, I had rediscovered parts of myself that had been submerged in motherhood. The teacher, the gardener, the friend, the investor, the community builder. Each role bringing its own satisfactions and challenges, each one reminding me that I was more than just someone's mother or widow. The greatest lesson, perhaps, was learning that sometimes losing what you thought was important leads to gaining what truly matters. Family isn't always defined by blood. Home isn't just a physical structure. Wealth isn't measured solely in dollars. And strength often emerges most powerfully through our deepest wounds. As I looked around at these dear faces, I knew that the family I had now might not be the one I had expected, but it was the one I needed, built on mutual respect, genuine interest, and shared experiences rather than obligation. Before we end our evening, I said, raising my glass for a final toast, I want to thank each of you for showing me that there is life after betrayal, that new connections can heal old wounds, and that sometimes the best chapters come later in the story. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a painful rejection? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of rediscovery resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more about finding strength in unexpected places. Like this video if you believe that it's never too late to stand up for your dignity, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that family is defined by love and respect, not just blood. Thank you for joining me today, and remember that sometimes the people who deserve a place at your table aren't the ones you expected.